Hi, welcome to Season 3, Episode 10 of the Weekly Wave. I'm Matthew Lyons, and beside me is not Aaron Johnson. It is our director, Mr. Derek Terrell.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, finally getting in front of the camera in Aaron's absence today. So looking forward to this interview.
Glad to have you. With us is the co-founder of Abington News, as well as a member of the planning board, Mr. Rick Collins. How are you?
Good. Do I need to get my hands too? Would that be helpful?
No, that's okay.
Feel free to.
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on here.
Absolutely. So to start off, as I just mentioned, you're a co-founder of Abington News, as well as a member of the planning board.
Yep.
So what kind of motivated you to get involved with Abington so heavily?
So it's a couple different things. One is I was brought up to appreciate community service and figuring out ways to help the community. Our society is one where if people don't help out, it doesn't work very well. And it is explicitly dependent on people, average citizens, helping out, participating, playing some sort of role, whether it's a nonprofit organization, getting involved with the government, whatever that might be. And for me, I've always had a particular interest in government. And as I think we might talk about later, being a reporter for a lot of years, I really particularly liked covering local government and planning boards, and because these really deal with issues that impact everyone on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than being the person covering these things, I wanted to be the person making the decisions. That's what it came down to.
Sure.
Very interesting. So kind of circling back to Abington News, you are a co-founder.
Yeah.
How did that process of founding Abington News go?
So it was something I was kicking around for a while. A number of years ago, you had a situation where both the regional dailies would cover Abington. There was a weekly that would cover Abington. And over the years, that's all been pulled back, all those resources. So basically you had a news desert, what's called a news desert, where there's nothing, no entity covering Abington on a regular basis. And it's really bad for a couple of reasons. One, people just don't know what's going on in town. Mm-hmm. They hear rumors, they hear things, my neighbor said this, and it goes onto social media and Facebook, and people have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And so, and the second part is that there's also an oversight component that journalism brings a lot of times, where if they know someone's in the crowd watching, it impacts how things are said, how things are done, and that's important, again, for a local government, for any sort of democratic board, to have that sort of public oversight component. So I've been thinking about it for a while, and when COVID hit, and we realized, I'm not going to be able to coach soccer, we're going to have a lot of extra free time on our hands, that was the time when I reached out to Michelle Christian, who had also done some reporting, and I said, hey, any interest in helping me with this? And she said immediately, absolutely. So set up a very basic WordPress site. It's not very pretty, but it gets the job done. Yeah. And within a couple weeks, we were off and running.
Awesome.
That's great, yeah.
So you wrote for the Patriot Ledger for a number of years.
Yes.
When did you know you wanted to be a journalist? What was the path you took?
So my family has been very involved with newspapers, although not on the reporting side of it. So, my dad, I had 4 members of my family at one point working for the Patriot Ledger.
Wow.
Selling advertising, printing the paper. My uncle worked in the print shop, literally printing the newspaper. Cool. My uncle was in charge of delivering it, all the newspaper boys. So, the newspaper was just always around, always in the house, always reading it. It was just part of kind of what we did. And so I was always interested in newspapers. And I originally thought maybe I wanted to do advertising. But when I got into college and joined the college newspaper, I'm like, no, you know what? I really like this reporting piece of it. I like asking questions. I like then telling people what I've learned. I like the process of working late into the night with friends and colleagues to put this thing out, having something that you can hold and look at the next day, a new product. And I really just like the entire process. So that kind of sold it for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Going off of that, between your time at the Patriot Ledger and Abington News, what has been your favorite article to write?
So I'll give you a couple of them.
Oh, okay.
One was back when the Democratic National Convention was in Boston in 2004. It was just, there's everything going on everywhere.
Mhm.
And so one day I was able to go, I got passes, I was able to go to the floor. But on the way out, I was kind of just doing these are the things that are happening. Triumph the comic insult dog was outside filming a bit. So got to stand there and watch that and write about that for a bit, just in terms of these are the things that you're seeing in Boston right now. It was kind of cool.
Did you talk to Triumph at all?
Oh God, no, I didn't want to. No. That would have been bad. It was some things like that. I got a chance to do a lot of really neat things. I got to go tour the Big Dig when it was still under construction.
Cool.
You get to go behind the scenes and see how things work.
Yeah.
So it's if you're naturally curious, it's a really good profession to get into because you get to ask a lot of questions and see a lot of things. One story is I did an article on odd high school mascots,
Oh, fun.
which
That's
brought me
fascinating.
to Abington.
Yeah.
Initially, it was the Arlington Spy Watchers, Clock Watchers, or something. It's just a whole weird thing, but that was a fun one because you got to go around and just talk to all sorts of high school kids about whether or not they liked their high school mascot,
Oh, that's cool.
and some did, and some didn't. Everyone in Abington liked theirs.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one.
It's okay. I mean, I like the Green Wave.
Yeah.
I think I do have a little bit of Green Wave pride.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. What did you learn? What are some of the big things you learned from journalism that has helped you as a town official?
The biggest is communication and the need for public outreach and public involvement. Those are the two biggest things where if you don't have an active policy of reaching out and getting people involved and letting people know what's going on, one, they get very grouchy and they don't like it. And it's a lot harder to accept projects that happen in that fashion, as opposed to you bring them in, you let them speak their piece, incorporate some of the changes they've suggested. Not all of them, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it makes the project better. And at the end, people tend to be more happy or more accepting of what happens. The worst thing towns can do is to not include the public in their discussion, in their decision-making process.
Yeah.
It doesn't go well. And that's communication. There's a lot of jargon at the municipal level. You start talking about Proposition 2.5 and overrides and debt exclusion and bond defeasance and all these other terms that municipal officials use when talking to each other. Site plan review. What is a site plan review? I mean, you tell me, do you know what a site plan?
Nope.
Yeah.
I have no idea what a site plan review is now.
It's recognizing that an average person doesn't understand always the terminology that's being used, and that we need to make it accessible to them so they can understand and they can participate, to remove that language barrier so that it's easier to do that.
Cool. So how do you manage your time between Abington News and the planning board?
Not very well.
Not very well? Do you have like some days where you focus on one, days where you focus on the other, or is it like what's more pressing at the moment? How do you kind of manage all that?
Yeah, and that's a challenge for someone like myself is time management. And I have two children at home, Ricky and Rebecca, and they've been learning from home 3 days a week, just like you guys are. So it's how do I help them with their work? How do I do this stuff? Because it's not my full-time job. It's not something that I get paid to do. It's something I'm just doing in my spare time or my free time. So there's always kind of a process where I have 3 or 4 stories in the works, so that I can take, today I've done interviews on 2 different articles that'll be coming out in the future. They're not coming out today probably, but I'll piece them together over the days, and when they're ready, we'll publish. So, and then something can pop up out of nowhere, a fire, storm, accident, breaking news, and then that kind of throws your whole thing into kablooey. My wife is very, very patient and understanding and knows that, we've been home and 3 fire trucks that come screaming down the street. Well, sorry, I'm gonna go chase it for a minute. And you go down the street and you find out that a car drove over a lawn, hit a fire hydrant, took out a telephone pole, and continued going on 3 wheels, which has happened. Wow. And now you have a breaking news story.
Yeah.
So it's you do your best to manage what you can, always looking ahead, and hopefully something comes out.
Yeah. So we're going to get philosophical here. So kind of thinking of like those ancient Roman beliefs of like it's a citizen's civic duty to participate, to vote, to do all these things. Do you subscribe to that belief?
100%. Republican democracy, which is what we have, which is, not everything goes up for a public vote. You elect people to make decisions for you at times. It's important to have people from different branches of life represented in government. The last thing you want are people from the same mindset, the same training, the same background making all the decisions, because you don't have a complete representation of how people think and feel and approach different things. And this is something that people, especially when you get into the working world, that you realize is that you don't want people who are all trained the same way. You want people from different backgrounds because they all bring a different viewpoint on something into it.
Right.
So the broader range of people you can have on a board, volunteering for the town, you're going to have a better outcome. It's as simple as that. And it's really tough. You have to voluntarily give time away from your family, from your friends, what you want to do. We don't get paid in Abington. None of us get paid for this. We don't get health insurance. We don't get, we don't get free trips to the dump or whatever. I mean, it's all volunteer. So you have to be willing to put that stuff aside and think, okay, I'm doing something that hopefully is going to make my town better. And that can be a challenge for people to balance that. But for me, it's important, and thankfully my wife is too. She's the chairwoman of the Parks and Rec Board, and she, on a couple other committees. But these are the things that are important to us, value-wise.
Well, that was a great answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's all we've got.
Yeah, that's all I've got for you. Thank you for coming on the show. This was a great interview.
Could I ask you about your interest in journalism and why you're doing this?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think from a student's perspective, like in terms of this show, I've heard a lot of students say like, for whatever reason, maybe a teacher will bring up like, oh, I saw like so-and-so's article. And I'll hear a student go like, oh, I don't like read the news.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have students, not so much in like the senior years, but like in the freshman years, they don't like read, they don't like to read. So in terms of setting up the show, it was to kind of bring in a new wave of viewers and of subscribers to the paper and kind of give the news to as many people as possible.
Well, you brought up a really interesting thing, if I can jump in on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how people consume news.
Mm-hmm.
For people to say, I don't read news, is not honest. They're consuming news all the time.
Right.
Every moment of their day, they're consuming something. But it's not, we don't sit down with a newspaper and read it line for line anymore like we did 40, 50 years ago. Now it's radio, it's TV, it's podcasts, it's social media, it's all these other components that are at our fingertips to help educate and inform. So it's like, no, you don't have to read the news. There are plenty of other ways to get it out there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I came on as director for season 2 and now season 3, and I was super excited when they asked me to do it. I've always been into TV shows and movies and just communication in that way and telling stories through like a digital media with sound and screen. So I was just really excited to come on, and I've had a blast doing it. And now where I'm looking towards college, I'm excited to continue pursuing that at the professional level. So
I will say journalism provides you with a amazing writing background. And that might be, all right, well, I'm not going to be a writer. I'm not an English major.
Right.
Everything you do in your professional career is going to involve writing and communication. And it's an easy way to stand out from everybody else if you have good writing skills, you can communicate well. It's just such an important piece of everything you're going to do for the rest of your lives.
Yeah.
And journalism forces you to do that, as well as ask good questions and manage time and feel flexible bouncing from different things. But it's such an important component going forward, content, communication, all of that.
And going off of what you said earlier, that kind of genuine curiosity that people have, they want to know the answers, and that's definitely another component. And it's a
like
it's a cool
with the
world.
curiosity, as Aaron and Matt are interviewing people, I love sitting back there directing the show, just hearing, watching the show for myself live, hearing all these different great people you guys have interviewed, and hearing all these stories and how other people lead their lives. It's so interesting, and I'm so happy we can share that with more people.
Absolutely.
Directors, producers, editors are all an important part of this, because it's one thing when you're sitting here doing it, and then an editor or a producer say, well, ask them about this as well, or
Right.
can you get more information about this? And it's just good to have that extra person kind of looking in. When you're at school, do you hear, I'm sure you've heard this, what's happening? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the news stories we want to answer, because otherwise, rumors spread. You don't know
Right.
why. People
Yeah.
are uncertain. So like that's a function of journalism, which is, this is what's happening, this is why people disagree.
Yeah, and especially this year where so many things are changing so quickly.
Big
It's
time.
like, why did this change happen?
Yep.
And it is nice to have the news and people making shows or articles to let people know why things happen the way they happen
Right.
in a year where everything's changing so quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show
Yeah,
and
this was
for
an amazing interview. Thank you.
the great advice and your years of service as a public service.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching, and tune in next week for a brand new episode of The Weekly Wave.
And make sure you follow us at all our social media accounts at the Green Wave Gazette and at the Weekly Wave.
Stay safe.
Thanks for watching.